press members, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Foreign Economic Relations Board, DEIC, I welcome you all and express my sincere appreciation to all who organized this forum with esteemed ministers and, of course, together with you. First of all, let me introduce our panelists of today. I believe you already looked at the program, but it is my duty to start with that. We are welcoming to His Excellency Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Grand Duke of Luxembourg, Xavier Bettel, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Republic of Moldova, Mihai Popșoi, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iceland, Thorgerður Katrín Gunnarsdóttir, if I could pronounce well. You prefer the first name, Excellency, but I will try the second name. It is a little bit much easier for me, if you don't mind. Minister of State for European Affairs and Defense of Ireland, Thomas Byrne, and Deputy Minister of Trade of Turkey, Mustafa Tuzcu. Then also let me give a brief also about DEIC, which I am chairing as a businessman. DEIC is a business organization which has been acting for 41 years with a motto of business diplomacy. We are operating on voluntary-based membership. We are not using any kind of public funds. And we have 153 business councils all over Europe with elected chairs, where 37 of them in Europe. So Europe is quite important for the country and also for DEIC. We are going to speak about Europe's competitiveness in the age of geopolitical uncertainties. So to save time, let me continue with a brief on competitiveness with a business people's perspective, because we used to speak about competing on price-wise, competing on quality-wise, competing on aesthetic-wise, speed-wise, service-wise, finance-wise, and so on. And apart from all the factors, our, business side's priority was and still is predictability. We were speaking about globalism before, and we were targeting free trade. But unfortunately, when we look at today, everything is nearly just the contrary. The only predictable reality of today is uncertainty. Protectionism and more barriers are growing each day, as well as growing crazy war possibilities around us. It is really changing nearly at each hour. If so, I believe we must forget classical point of views of decades and try to act according to the present reality, which we are going to discuss right now. As a business chair of Turkey, being a candidate member of EU, I also want to hear the discussions also from this perspective, if the Excellencies allow me. Since the meaning of competitiveness changed dramatically, shall we continue to negotiate Turkey's membership for another 60 years, as well as negotiating updating of customs units for another 30 years? This is a question. Are we ready to answer our grandchildren's questions about that, losing not only our opportunity, but also theirs by blocking their future? Also, allow me that you may have already noticed the envelopes, I think, for you, the envelopes on your seats. You will find the published open letter as we DEIC addressed to EU leaders about a month ago, reflecting our concerns and recommendations from our perspective regarding the issues I mentioned so far. And just to inform you, we are going to continue those kind of activities at each European countries. With those, let me give the floor to our esteemed panelist ministers, where I am going to ask one question for each of them. I have been told for the organizers that we have from now on more or less about 50 minutes. The total time of the panel will be about an hour. Then we are going to expect from each panelist to finalize their comment in 10 minutes. But we had a brief meeting in between before the panel. So to be able to make the panel more attractive, we may have some limited interactions from other panels while the one is speaking. So with those, I'm going to start, first of all, with the Deputy Prime Minister, Savia Batal. May I ask the first question to Your Excellency? My question is to you. Under the topic of our panel, of course, without forgetting that point, does Europe need a more assertive and coordinated industrial policy to compete globally? And if so, how can this be reconciled with fair competition principles? So the floor is yours.
I was starting to read your letter, but you will get an answer at the end of the hour.
Well, no, you can mention about it whenever you want.
Yeah,
for us, it is quite important letter.
Okay, but I have no time to read now. I will read it. I will read soon. A few things you just said. The first thing is you said about predictability. Yes, I know that we will spend an hour now here, but predictability is impossible now. When you speak about competitiveness, when you speak about Europe, we know as European Union, like most of countries, that what's happening around the world has an impact also on our economies. Yesterday, the petrol prices dropped. With what's happening today, I'm sure that tonight the petrol price will go up. So it is difficult to have predictability also for governments, for businesses, and also for persons. We had, about the competitiveness in Europe, we have Enrico Letta and Mario Draghi, who wrote very nice reports. And I think a lot of things has to be also bring in reality. We speak also very often of making it easier, you know. I don't know if you have also this kind of ministry in your administration here, we call it administrative simplification. This is something, it's like a bit the Loch Ness. Everybody speaks about it, but nobody saw the simplification the last years. But it's the fact that we want to go in that direction. We have a market of 450 million consumers in Europe. The competitiveness, and to be very frank, it's we instead of having a big European supermarket, we have 27 mini national markets. So we need also one market and not 27 different legislations too, because it is difficult when you have a small company to fulfill all the conditions of 27 different countries. But also we need sometimes to be able to say that maybe today we give up something small to have something bigger today. If I look at Airbus is one of the biggest success stories of the European Union. It's the biggest competitor of Boeing, but it was because France, Germany, Spain, and the UK were able to say, we built something together. I see today with the defense. We have 27 mini markets. We don't have a global market where we're able to produce one type of thing which will be less expensive, etc., etc. So if we want as European Union to be competitive, we should have also sometimes common projects. And so to give up maybe today something, but tomorrow have the bigger things. The second thing is we should not fall in the trap to say we are less competitive because energy is more expensive, ecological questions are more strict in Europe, social issues are too strict in Europe, and to give up this. I would not agree that if just the economy would mean that we don't care about the environment for the next 50 years, if we don't care about the social issues, we need to find the right balance between both. But what we can do is to avoid economic dumpings with state aids existing in some other parts of the world, with ecological dumpings existing, with social dumping existing, to have criteria where when the products enter the European market, there will be a recalculation to be able to have fair prices also, that we have also chance to be more competitive on some topics. When you know that you can have a product, we will be a fair trade product, but you can have also a product produced by a child somewhere in a field, 8 years or 9 years old child, with no respect of rights, with no respect of ecological questions, etc., etc. I prefer not to make our rules easier because we want to be more competitive just on the table of the economy to give up quality criteria that we have too. So we have to find the right balance between both.
We have to find, but what is that right way? We need also your suggestions, Excellency.
So let's start. I told you. The first thing is I believe that we need to have more common projects.
Sorry again. I mean, from my perspective, I'm a businessman. Of course, uncertainty is going on, but the life also is running.
Yes.
We are going to eat something, we are going to have some clothing, we are going to invest, we should decide for something. And you are the decision makers
Yes.
from the political side.
Yes.
At least we must understand your point of view, although the business part is somehow independent, but we are dependent with your decisions. So how it will be?
Yeah, but if the problem is if businessmen just see the business without other criteria, we will get problems too. I'm sorry, we need to find the right balance. If the businessman in my country tells me, you are too strict, for example, on ecological points. You are too the social issues, you pay the lowest salary is too high. But I won't give up. If we want to have a country where people are still able to work together, to live together, to respect each other, we need criteria. Maybe we are less attractive and prices can be higher, but at the end of the day, it's also a question of respect. If you see how a shirt is done here and in some Asian countries, so maybe my shirt will be 9 euros and the Asian shirt will be 5 euros. But if the people would know also behind that there will be an 8, 9, 10 years old child doing this shirt in a cellar somewhere where the products are used which will harm his whole health for the next year. So it is important to have criteria on one side who will make you maybe less competitive. But at the end of the day also where we have ethical and social criteria which are important. And I'm a liberal, I'm not a socialist or communist. Maybe you believe now that I'm too left-wing, but it is important to keep this balance. Because in some countries now, we have political parties who just want to destroy successes. I'm happy if a businessman is successful. But being a successful businessman doesn't mean that people working in your business have to be weak. No. Because very often, a lot of businessmen do not understand that if the people working in the business are good and happy, it is good for the business. And if the company goes well, and this is something I try to explain to the unions, if the company goes well, it is good also for the people working in the companies. We should avoid to have a competition between people, working forces and the business community, and we have too much the stigma always that it's, if the company goes well, it is because we took away something to the people working in the company. So we need to find right balances. So to be competitive as European Union, we have the fact of energy prices who are too high, and we know that some companies will leave us to go to other continents because they know that the energy prices are cheaper. So we need to see how we can protect also some markets. But the worst thing is, and this will be the result at the end of the day, that there will be more protection instead of a free market. And that's not good for you.
No.
Yes, but that's the reality.
We want free market. We do not want more protectionist.
Yes, but then we need to have fair rules. You know,
Sure.
we have no fair rules in the global market. I just come back from Cameroon, where we were together in Cameroon of the OMC, the World Trade Organizations. There are no rules. There are no rules anymore. Some countries are doing what they want. They don't care about the others. And that's the problem. When we have a world fixed on rules, based on certainty, on legality, it is good. But when we have presidents who say, I don't care, I do what I want, and my country will do what they want, it is difficult to speak about predictability. And we have this uncertainty. And I'm sorry, I'm too long now.
No, you are...
No, but it's just the fact that it is, for the moment, unpredictability. It's done also because of political instability and of rules that we built the last 40 years and are going to be, for the moment, are weakened. International law is not working anymore. I'm sorry, the international law is on the thread for the moment. But this is the fact. I'm sorry to be that pessimistic on the fact that for the moment, predictability, and I know politicians usually they promise a lot of things and they say we will fix it. But for the moment, we are so dependent from others that it's very difficult to promise you how it will go in the next 6 months, and even next month.
We must hear those ones, Excellency. One last point. I had mentioned about our Turkey's relations with Europe. We are doing more than 50% of our bilateral trade with Europe, not only with European Union, total Europe, I mean. For this point, it is quite important, our relations. I'm 65 years old, Excellency, and our being a candidate membership with Europe is more or less same with my age. So what do you think about it? If there is a negotiation for more than 60 years, there is something wrong here or there. This is first. And the second point, what do you think about customs unions updating? This is my last question for you.
So the first thing is...
I'm going to ask the same questions to the other ministers also.
I'm the lucky one to answer first. The thing is, I prefer Turkey to watch in my direction, European direction, and the other direction. I prefer that you watch to Europe than to the other side. And for that, we need to find common ways to deepen the relations that we have. But I have to admit that sometimes your country comes closer to the European Union and sometimes less closer. We have criteria, the Copenhagen criteria, which are the criteria to fulfill to be a European member. Sometimes you come closer, sometimes you take some directions that are not in the right direction for being a member of the European Union. It's not now on me to tell you here what to do, but you know exactly what are the criteria and in what direction it has to go. And the fact is, I think we have to find how we can have a win-win situation. I've been Prime Minister for 10 years, where we worked a lot with you also about some different topics, and I think that there are more opportunities to deepen the relations with the European Union. I know for the moment that there is a wish to have European Union where we have a lot of new members. I'm sitting here with a candidate member now, a country that will organize even a referendum to know if they should be a member or not of the European Union. And I just can tell you that we should be happy to see that so many countries want still to join. But the main point of the European Union is a peace project, and I'm proud that since '57 we were able to grow up in peace. It's not always easy, but at least we were able to keep peace, and that these countries that are around still, because you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your neighbors. And that nowadays we are living in a peace project functioning with 27 countries. We were 28, I was there when the Brexit happened too, but it's just the fact that for me, you know exactly the errors sometimes that have been done, and sometimes it's a relation closer, less closer, but I'm convinced today that if there would be a demand in Brussels to say should we or should we not, there are some homework still to do, to be very frank.
Thank you so much, Excellency. Now let me continue with Deputy Prime Minister of Moldova, His Excellency Mihai Popșoi. My question to you, Excellency, is still for competitiveness, of course. For Europe's competitiveness, is resilience becoming more important than cost efficiency in shaping industrial and trade policy? Please.
Indeed, thank you. Competitiveness is clearly a buzzword these days. And Xavier already mentioned Letta and Draghi's reports, which have clearly stated the diagnosis of everything what is problematic and all the challenges that the EU is facing in making sure that it can capitalize on all the opportunities that the EU has. But unfortunately, the decision-making is too slow to address all the concerns that both Letta and Draghi raised. And the prescription is clear. It needs to have more European integration, because, again, when you have 27 different markets, even though it's supposed to be a single market, but there is so much friction within the proverbial single market that, according to trade experts, if you actually address in a meaningful way those trade frictions, you can double the European GDP if you eliminate all those frictions in the single market. But then again, how can a single market truly function without a fiscal union, without a banking union? And if we look around in today's international environment, how about defending a single market without having a defense union? So there are all these questions that are mounting, and it's very popular in Europe these days to have this sort of, to bash on Europe and to have this self-harm. But in fact, Europe is the most successful peace project, the most successful economic project in world history. And it only takes, well, if it only was that easy, to continue with this success story by deepening, by also widening the European Union. Because not a single EU country that joined the EU is worse off today than it was at the accession process. If we look at all the enlargement waves, all the countries have benefited tremendously, but also the EU as a whole has benefited enormously. When the Polish economy is growing or the Romanian economy is growing, it is the producers of metal from Luxembourg that are winning, the banking services from Luxembourg that are winning. So the more growth across both new and old member states, the better it is for everyone. So, in order for deepening and widening of the European Union to happen, of course, it's a matter of political will. But then again, if we look at today's international environment, it begs the question, what else is required, given how turbulent the international environment is, to actually move forward with both the deepening of the European project, but also widening? And as a candidate country, I can speak on behalf of the Republic of Moldova when it comes to resilience. If a small country like Moldova, with rather modest means, was able to withstand the avalanche of interference, the avalanche of propaganda that was trying to undermine the legitimate craving of the Moldovan people to see their future in the European family of nations, and we managed to successfully hold a European referendum for joining the European Union, albeit with enormous challenges, Moldovans have spoken loud and clear where they want to see the future of their children, because they see the European Union clearly contributing to growing Moldova's resilience, not undermining it, like some other big powers with whom we used to be quite close in our history. European Union now, on a daily basis, is helping to increase and improve the quality of life in Moldova, be it through the growth and resilience package that helps prepare the Moldovan economy to be competitive in the single market, or through the European Peace Facility, the EPF program, that is helping Moldova's security and defense sector to be more resilient, or even supposedly more mundane avenues such as eliminating roaming charges for Moldovans who are going to the European Union. I must admit it's something that I underestimated before. Now when I go to the EU and I open roaming and I don't have the PTSD as I used to have before, and now it's the same price as back home, it's very convenient for travelers, for business people. The SEPA agreement, Single European Payment Area, the banking sector and citizens alike, when they make a transfer, they save money every day. And I remember from my own experience again, when I was a student in Milan and I had to send 50 euros from Moldova to Milan to defend my thesis there. The fee for the banking transaction was 70 euros to send 50 euros from Moldova to Milan. Now that has been addressed. Millions are being saved by business people in Moldova and in Europe alike. And this is, of course, growing the economic resilience of the country. So in the last few years, needless to say, the circumstances have been rather hard on Moldova and, of course, on Ukraine as a result of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. But Moldova is more resilient now than it was a few years ago. We are no longer dependent on Gazprom for gas. We've increased significantly green energy in Moldova. We have significantly consolidated our informational security, energy security, economic security. And yes, it continues to be difficult, but thanks to the support of our partners in the European Union, but also beyond the European Union, Turkey is our second economic partner after Romania. And yesterday we got a very strong and ambitious target from the two presidents to double our trade balance.
This is you just mentioned today, so for business people also it's quite important, because you are going to open the way and we will do it, to be able to double it.
We are certainly very much encouraging that, and especially the strong business presence of Turkish companies in Moldova, very much welcome. Because again, the more competition, the more investment, the more we can increase our competitiveness. And Moldova is clearly open for business. No matter the challenges, we are making sure that we are opening up. We are decreasing those frictions that may exist. And our ethos when it comes to business people is we are not creating red tape for businesses. We are rolling the red carpet. That's the philosophy that we have in Moldova. And of course, it's difficult, but the resilience that we've shown in the last 4 years at the institutional level, but also at the societal level, having withstood one crisis after another, having welcomed over 1 million of Ukrainian refugees in the last 4 years, welcoming on a constant basis.
We know what does it mean from Syria side, as Turkey, we know what you are having there.
But in Moldova's case, our population is 2.5 million.
Sure.
And we've welcomed in the last 4 years over 1 million. We've constantly welcomed on constant basis over 100,000, which is 4% of Moldova's population. We opened the labor market, the healthcare, the education system, because that's what neighbors do. That's the only thing you are expected to do when your neighbor is in a time of need. But then, of course, Ukraine is very much defending us, because all of our friends internationally are saying that Ukraine is defending them. Well, yes, but in Moldova's case, it's very tangible. The armed men and women of the Ukrainian armed forces and the Ukrainian society is holding Moldova safe. And that allows us to grow our resilience, to improve our competitiveness, and to have this aspiration to join the European Union in the years to come. Of course, it's difficult to set an exact timeline, especially when we are in Turkey. That's a bit difficult. But we are committed. We are doing the reforms back home, and we are counting on our friends and partners in Brussels and in member states alike to live up to the promise that we made each other, that it's a merit-based system, and if you work hard and you deliver, then you advance. And we are doing our best in Moldova to do that.
May I ask, since your position is different than the others, I mean, as the country, what do you think about our journey for being a candidate member? So,
as a non-EU member, I can be very generous when it comes to Turkey's accession to the EU. But in all seriousness, the European Union has been proven to be stronger with every accession wave. And perhaps the best success story, I mean, every country that joined is a success story, but perhaps by far the biggest transformation, the biggest success story is Poland. Given the economic success story that Poles have demonstrated, but also our Romanian brothers, the Baltic countries, you name it. But this is a two-way street. The German industry benefited a lot from cooperating with Slovakia, with Poland, with Hungary, with Czechia. And it was, speaking of competitiveness, it was the enlargement of the EU that allowed Germany and French and Luxembourg's competitiveness to be there, given that they were able to cooperate with these new countries that joined. And the international competition is very fierce. So again, being very generous as a non-EU country yet, the more the merrier. And the added value that each country brings to the European table makes the European Union stronger and more resilient together.
Thank you so much, Excellency. As well as the others, your red carpet is welcomed. Thank you so much. Now we are going to continue with Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iceland, Her Excellency Thorgerður. She preferred the first name. Okay. Excellency, my question to you is, what institutional or policy reforms are necessary to ensure that Europe acts as a coherent and competitive economic bloc in an increasingly multipolar world? Please.
Thank you. Just to give the broader picture, in the beginning, I want to thank the Turkish government for organizing this very good this forum, because it's the first time I attend here, and probably will not be the last one. It has been very useful in all kinds of terms, and I think it's so right what your president said yesterday, that we need now more diplomacy, more collaboration, and less, and you know, the uncertainty has to go away. We have to manage the uncertainty. So very important tunes and statement from your president. But coming to Iceland, I don't know if all of you know, we are not in the European Union, not yet from my perspective. I'm a leader of a liberal Reform Party, Liberal Right Party. In Iceland, we have been advocating for a long time. We are a part of NATO. We are a founding member of NATO. But we have been advocating, lobbying, and cheering for membership of EU. And now, for almost 1.5 years, this government, we decided to have a referendum. We applied actually for membership 2009. And negotiated, closed 11 chapters out of 33. We opened 27 chapters already at that time, but the government 2013 stopped the process. So this government is asking the people of Iceland, should we continue, resume to the negotiation table and get a treaty or agreement with the European Union. And that is, from my perspective, really important. And people ask me why now, and I think there are various reasons, but the basic one is that every government, every time, has to secure the society, the security of its own people. Yes, and one is the economic security, you could say, and we have the smallest currency in the world. We have always, in Iceland, 2 or 3 times higher inflation than normally in Europe. We have triple the interest rates. We have now, for a time being now, not for a time being, for actually a pretty long time, 8% interest rate. So it's pretty harsh for example, young people to buy houses and apartments, etc. So that is the one part. The other part is we have to be realistic as well. We are living in a volatile world. We have to defend our, I would say, not just our environment and area and where we are up in the North Atlantic. We also have to defend our values. And that's why I say, you know, the European Union, I think from my point of view, European Union should speak out louder. They should have more, the nations and members of the European Union should have more self-esteem. European Union is a superpower, and I absolutely agree what you say in your letter here. EU steady progress towards becoming a true global power, and I think they are in reach of being a true global power. But then they should also act like one. And one of the, because now we are going to have a referendum in late August, 29th of August. And we already have a rather harsh debate in Iceland regarding this referendum. And the no side, okay, they are saying a lot of bullshit that all the young men in Iceland will be sent into a European army and the European Union will take all our resources like the fisheries, etc. But one of the most common questions and statements I get and the yes said get is the European Union is not competitive enough. You know, it's not so competitive like the US or other superpowers. So in a way, yes, I can say the Union should speed up the process. We know already they have this policy on, and Xavier mentioned that, this policy on simplification, on deregulation. It's fine. You know, Europe, you know, is focusing on being quicker on its feet. But one part of the competitiveness of Europe, European Union, is not just processing quicker and producing quicker and gaining more money and that kind of interest. But part and a very big bulk of Europe's competitiveness is that Europe is sticking to its values, is the power that still has the courage to talk about democracy, about human rights, about freedom, about territorial integrity, about the nation's right to self-determination. And because I'm from Iceland, of course, all this discussion about Greenland, it has affected Iceland. And the Greenlanders have said, you know, and we always say, you know, it's the Greenlanders to decide whether they want to be independent or belonging to another country. And they have said quite clearly, we want to be part of rather Denmark than the US. But what was quite important and impressive, it was when the nations of the European Union stood by Denmark's side and said, no, we are not going to do anything else than stand with the Danes and respect the international law, rules-based order. And for us, and for me in Iceland, it's really important to see that there are nations, there are superpowers like EU that are standing with these important principles. So, of course, Europe has to act quicker and be quicker, like I said, on its feet. But On the other hand, the resilience and this courage on standing behind the principles, it's the part of the broader picture.
And what's your message about our long journey, Turkey's long journey with the European Union?
Make a referendum.
The red carpet as well, like Mihai said, you know. I can understand, and I just read shortly this letter. I understand this, why you read this, why you sent this. But this is something you have in your discussion and collaboration with the European Union. But on the other hand, we should do everything what we can, be it Turkey, or be it Iceland, or other nations outside the European Union. We have to evolve a partnership that is beneficial for both. And of course, that means also Turkey as Iceland. I think when you hold to your principles, then all these countries, we can be stronger together. Exactly now, in times when we are in more need of diplomacy and discussion and collaboration than we need wars or conflicts.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Excellency. Now we are going to continue with Ireland, and I'm going to give the floor to Minister of State, to Thomas Byrne. My question to you is, Excellency, how can Europe align industrial policy with the green and digital transition while avoiding fragmentation with the continent? It's not so easy, I know.
Well, nothing is easy in this world, and I think we'll all agree to that in this climate that we're in at the moment, whether for governments or indeed for business. I think it is important to remember, just to briefly remember, when the European Union as a peace process has been mentioned here by everybody, today is the 75th anniversary of the signing of the Treaty of Paris, which established the European Coal and Steel Community. So again, that sounds like an economic venture, and it was, to join the industries of coal and steel, but fundamentally it was a peace project. So that the coal and steel could not be converted into weapons, and therefore if they're working together on it, certainly the weapons couldn't be used to fight each other. And I think that it's really important to remember that that's where the European Union came from, fundamentally as a peace project. And we get our prosperity from that peace that has lasted through the decades since that time. And yes, we have a high level of ambition, as Xavier has said, in terms of social policy, in terms of equality, in terms of workers' rights, in terms of the rule of law, in terms of the environment. And we also have a business environment that we need to protect and promote as well, to create jobs and prosperity for our people. And on some occasions, I think we have gone too far with some of the bureaucratic requirements, some of the form fitting, some of the reports that are required to be done. And there is a big agenda now in the European Union on simplification, which has been mentioned by many. But there's also the agenda of completing the single market, making the single market as seamless as possible. The Draghi letter reports have been mentioned. But I think during the Irish presidency, if we all can work together and we can speak at one voice, we're going to see the implementation of huge parts of the Draghi and letter reports to make our businesses more efficient, to make our single market more meaningful to the citizens in terms of increased prosperity, and yes, to reach out to the rest of the world outside the European Union, first to the countries on the enlargement list, but also to the wider world in terms of trade deals. And I can speak for Ireland. I think actually we were probably the best example of a country that has come from abject poverty to significant prosperity, I would say, for a number of reasons. I always say our adherence to the rule of law and values, as our colleague has said, but also membership of the European Union and our education system as well, and the high educational attainment that we have. So we're going to work through the Irish presidency. We are likely now to get a roadmap from the Commission. In fact, we've got that. The leaders are going to discuss it at the leaders' meeting next week, to direct us as to the implementation of effectively the Letta and Draghi reports. And many of the deadlines, in fact 17 out of the 42 deadlines that are in this roadmap, happen during the Irish presidency. So it's a huge undertaking. It'll be logistically challenging for us and for the system, because it requires the European Parliament and the governments to come together with the Commission to agree. But we're hoping to work as hard as we can to implement this vision, to make our the workings of our businesses, the obligations of our businesses, I won't say easier, but maybe more efficient, while at the same time protecting the objectives that we've set and that our people value in the European Union. And I sympathise with my colleague from Iceland and the debate in Iceland on the European Union and people talking about a European army and all of this stuff, because we've heard this all before in Ireland every time we've had a referendum, and it's not the case at all. The European Union is not a defence alliance, that's NATO. We want good cooperation with NATO, but fundamentally defence policy is for the NATO countries. So we're looking forward to an exciting presidency. We want to pursue the enlargement agenda. We want to pursue the agenda of the Draghi and Letta reports, and also to protect those values that have, I think, made us successful in the European Union.
I mean, from our internal discussions with the business people, I say, time to time, we say to each other that this dual translation, I mean, green translation and also the digital, is not only limited with some certain areas. For me, it is an economic area. There is a green economy coming with all the alternative systems, let's say, and digital economy is coming. If we just consider it as if taking care and responding to the green life or only to digital life, it will be quite limited. There is really two big economies are coming to our life, I believe so.
Yeah, I completely agree. They're all around us, and we have to be ready for the changes that are already here, and we make sure our governing system, our obligations in company, meet the needs of companies and what we need to do in terms of the environment. But you're right, they're all around us. They're interwoven into every facet of business, and I would say the life of the people too.
And Excellency, 1.5 months later, your position will be much more important. Of course, still important, but what you are going to say about our long journey? Since from 1st of July, you will be in a different position, more active position. So what do you think about us?
Well, Ireland wants very strong relations with Turkey, that's for sure. And we think there is an opportunity to modernise the relationship, to look at the opportunities that are there. I can say that I grew up in a town where in the 1840s there was a famous famine in Ireland, but a Turkish ship came to my town during the famine and provided food to the people at the time, and that is still remembered. In fact, the symbol of our town, the town I grew up in, I don't represent it in Parliament, but the symbol is a star and crescent actually from that time still. So I think there's a willingness to work with Turkey, to examine the business opportunities that are there, to look at the inefficiencies that are there. But of course we all must remind each other as well of all of our obligations to all of our people, and how do we make sure that whatever we do benefits all of our citizens. But I think that cooperation, I think, is something that will certainly benefit everybody. So look, we'll move forward. It takes the member states coming together to progress matters. Ireland now in the next few weeks, or really now, I suppose, we're starting to come into presidency mode where we must be honest brokers and not take a national position and try to chair the discussion among the member states. So it's a very exciting time for us, and my counterpart from Turkey, Mehmet, and all of the ministers of foreign or European affairs in accession countries will be invited to Dublin for the General Affairs Council informal, and that will be an excellent opportunity to discuss where we sit with enlargement, which is a key priority of the Irish government.
Thank you so much, Excellency. And now let's come to Turkish side. We have our Deputy Minister of Trade, and I'm going to directly the same question without looking at the others, Excellency, and with the same frame of our topic. At the moment when transatlantic trade relations are being redefined and new policy tools are emerging to address intensifying global strategic competition, thus postponing and modernization of the EU-Turkey customs union to really serve the European Union's strategic and economic interests? Please.
Thank you very much, Nail Bey, for the question. And I will take the liberty of being a host country here in this forum. I will be very open and blunt in my remarks, and I also have the privilege to have the next presidency next to me. So I will be very open to respond to your question. What while starting also, I will just explain what the EU competitiveness means, because I'm coming from a trade and a background, not a diplomatic background. So I will focus on that part, and then I will try to also link this with our customs union relations with the EU. First of all, it is for sure that the EU is failing in industry. So it is a recognition by the Commission. We see reports and reports. They are trying to bring back the industrial competitiveness of the Union, the bloc. And we have this Draghi report. It underlines the need to decarbonize the economy and also to reduce the strategic dependencies and also to close the innovation gap. So the EU is very much behind the other powers, and it's not also a secret that the EU has a fundamental growth challenges. It is why the EU in the last 20 years, the growth in the EU is only 1.3% compared to the US. It is double of this, and China is 8%, and Turkey is in the last 20 years, the growth is around 5.3%. So we have a growth problem here. So for achieving the Draghi report's main priorities, you need to have a growth at least. For this, you also need to have a manufacturing in your bloc, which is almost declined to 14% in the EU. The EU is now targeting 20%. And the exports, the global exports are also in decline in the EU. So under these conditions, we see that the EU competitiveness strategy is all understandable. And we also see that the EU is also trying to put economic security, economic resilience above all the priorities, and now choosing this strategic autonomy and economic resilience over the market efficiency. We fully understand this. It is a new phase of industry for the EU, and we see that Europe's diagnosis of the problem is largely correct. But when it comes to treatment, we see there are lots of mistakes, including the ones linked to Turkey. Here, I will tell the problems or the confrontation we have with the EU. While the Luxembourg ministers mentioned about the predictability in the world, global uncertainties, we also should think that how the EU is contributing this predictability with all this new legislation, regulations, and the new approach. So we have to also judge our own approach here. Here, I want to give some examples. This Industry Accelerator Act 1, and also Zero Industry Act, and also the punitive measure on steel. How we are helping the predictability in the world with all these measures. So in here, we need Europe also to think about this. And here we see mainly three problems currently. The first, and these are not only problems I see as a Turkish citizen, as a negotiator, also this is the fact also we are talking with my colleagues in the EU countries, member countries, even from the Commission. First, if you have a new industrial policy, implementing industrial policy, you shouldn't be an inward-looking policy. You cannot have an isolating perspective. It is a mistake for us. In today's global economy, competitiveness cannot be built in isolation here. And here I remember 5 years ago when we had the discussion with regard to US, when they have this Inflation Reduction Act, we were having the same stance with the EU. It is for sure that it was against the main international rules, but we have now our own industrial Inflation Reduction Act in the EU with this Industrial Accelerator Act. And here it is a mistake to isolate the union. The second, the new regulations and policy frameworks for us in this building this competitiveness should aim at deeper integration rather than fragmentation. Here also in this Net Zero Industry Act, we see this trend also. And third, in restructuring the European economy, policymakers should avoid excessive regulation, over-regulation. Unfortunately, day by day, we are at technical level, policymaker level, we have difficulties to follow all these drafts. Even from time to time, you have this omnibus, the simplification acts. It is not easy even for the ones in the EU to follow all this. So here I will come to our customs union to your question, Nail Bey. Within the strategy of the EU, Turkey has a special place. Turkey is precisely the most advanced and successful institutional framework the EU has established with any non-member country. In the last 30 years, our trade volume increased from 23 billion to 230 billion. And also, we see that Turkey plays an important role in Europe's economic security, across also energy, industry, food supply, and technology. And more recently, we see Turkey has also emerged as a key hub for connectivity for the EU too, especially for Caspian corridor, links to the Middle East, and also new routes in energy, technology, and logistics. So Turkey is central to diversification efforts of the EU. So we have more critical position than what we had in before 30 years. So Europe is an aging continent, and we have dynamic workforce for the EU. We have a strong manufacturing base here. We have entrepreneurial energy, and these elements are here to help the EU to help the EU's boost the stagnation growth in the EU. So we are currently the EU's 5th largest trading partner. So not the EU is important for us. As Nail Bey just underlined, of course, EU is our main market, but also for the EU, Turkey is also an important partner. We are the 5th largest trading partner and 3rd among the preferential trade partner. So this relationship is not one-sided, and it is clearly a mutually reinforcing partnership. Here I have to remind that this custom union modernization, as the minister from Luxembourg mentioned, it is not an option. So we cannot just tell that we will go that way, we wait for this, we have to wait for this. It is a necessity. It is a strategic necessity for both sides. When we incepted this arrangement, it was in 1995, there was no euro even. There were only 15 members in the Union, and the EU, in the agenda, there was no green transition, no digital transition. It was a completely different time. So at that time, the EU had only 13 free trade agreements. Today, you have 44 agreements with 76 counterparts, and we have only 24. Here, as I said, I will be very open in discussion. I have to say that we understand the EU's ongoing efforts diversifying its trade portfolio to supply, to just ensure this supply chains with its new agreements with Australia, with India, with Mercosur. But I think in your countries also you do have the same understanding, which is that if you have a problem on competitiveness, if you fail something, if you cannot deliver in some area, first you go to your neighbors, your friends, to proximate places. You don't need to go Australia, of course. We are around, we are next to you, and we are ready for this. Here, I think a truly coherent and competitive institutional policy, we think that requires that you, of course, you reach new partners, but we shouldn't neglect the one next to you. So we are here for helping the industrial competitiveness of the EU to achieve the strategic autonomy of the EU. We want to be part of this successful industrial transformation. Turkey is not just a partner, Turkey is a part of the solution, we believe. However, sometimes we see that we are not able to convince some of our EU friends that we are with you in different areas. We try to prove that we are a European country. Yesterday, our president underlined in his remarks very openly, Turkey is an integral part of Europe. And we see that our friends accepting, recognizing that, they say that Turkey is a part of its defense strategy. We are also part of the work in Ukrainian reconstruction of the Ukraine and also industrial competitiveness. We hear all this from the EU partners, but when it comes to regulation, what we see is, first, when you have safe on defense, we see that Turkey is trying to be in the safe. If we are part of this defense architecture, why we have to insist our presence position in the EU? And also it is the same also for Ukraine. We have to be there for reconstruction of Ukraine, but we are not in Ukraine facility of the EU. We are not completely a part of Industrial Accelerator Act of the EU. So we have this need. We have a mutual strategic partnership for the future, and we try to reflect this at all levels. Fortunately, we have a very good, strong relations with the Commission. With trade, I have many good partners with us. But when it comes to other partners, we see that this cooperation is something can fade away at some levels. So we are ready to help the EU to increase its competitiveness, and we are here to continue and also strengthen our relations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Excellency. I'm just checking also the time. Since none of you interrupted the other one's speech, before concluding, I may ask you if you want to add anything. We are ready. If not, with a few words, I'm going to conclude. Any? Please.
It's very slippy. No, a few things. The first thing is, I told you before, and I don't want to be misunderstood, also with all the custom unions, everything, we need to make it easier, but we need to find also win-win solutions. We see for the moment that even in the predictability of what we thought was granted changed. Tariffs was something 2 years ago, nobody was even thinking about what it would be, tariffs. So we see that the predictability with everything what was granted is not granted anymore. And so for me, it is very important for Turkey, but like Europe, also to have deeper relations with trusted partners that we had before. Also with the questions, I know this is now not very popular, what I will say, but when you spoke about EU accession and everything, you know that there are still some topics we need to clarify. We have Cyprus sitting with us around the table. You know that this is a complicated topic. We know that there will be some topics we need to be able to speak about it. And that's for me the European Union, being able to speak without needing to share everything, but at least to go in the same direction, trying to find also solutions. But my wish is that with Turkey, we will. I tell you, for me, your future is in my direction, and the biggest error we could do is to disappoint you that you are looking in other directions. That it's not in our interest, but also not in yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Excellency. Please.
Yeah, I'm just very grateful for the discussion here today. I think it's been very important. Xavier is one of the longest serving politicians around the EU table. I suppose Ireland is a success story at the EU table, and we've one candidate country, one possible candidate country. Incidentally, Iceland suspended their application during the last Irish presidency, and we're hoping that maybe if their referendum is successful, that maybe they'll renew it during the next Irish presidency. But I hope that, you know, my presence here today, representing my government, is a sign, I suppose, of our outward-looking nature, that we want to have excellent relationships with our neighbours. And I think that's a very important part of Irish foreign policy, where there are, as Xavier said, topics to discuss. We can discuss them openly and honestly, but fundamentally, by working together, by listening to the challenges that you raise. And there are challenges for us, for Ireland even, in some of the policy proposals that are coming forward. And Xavier, I'm sure, will say the same about Luxembourg. There are challenges for Luxembourg in some of the issues that we're discussing around the table at the moment. But by being at that table, by discussing, by conducting diplomacy, I think we can get solutions to these problems and make life better for our citizens.
If you allow, I'm not going to speak too much for conclusion, but I believe strength of Europe's competitiveness, including Turkey, I will say, will be closely linked to the strength of partnership. And in this level, we as Turkish business community stand ready to continue working hand in hand in our European partners in a constructive and forward-looking manner, I will say. Thank you for your time, Excellencies. And also, really thanks to our Minister of Foreign Affairs for their efforts, and to all who helped for this forum. Thank you so much.